The hospital room in Abuja was quiet, filled only with the soft, uneven beeps of the heart monitor. Chinedu Okafor, tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, stood by his father's bedside. He was not the confident CEO of Okafor Group, in this moment just a son watching the life of his father fade away. His deep brown eyes, often filled with authority, were clouded with grief. Chief Okafor, once a commanding presence, now lay frail. With trembling fingers, he unclasped the family heirloom, a heavy gold wristwatch that had been passed down for generations. Its surface glimmered faintly under the sterile hospital light. Chinedu. His father's voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. This is not just gold. It is a promise. Protect our name. Protect the company. Protect our legacy. Chinedu swallowed hard, his jaw tightening as he forced himself not to break down. I will, Papa. I promise. Minutes later, Chief Okafor drew his final breath, leaving Chinedu in the silence of a legacy too heavy for one man's shoulders. That same evening, Chinedu sat alone in his car outside the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja. He had been expected at a high-profile business event that night, months in the making. But the thought of smiling at investors felt unbearable when his father's absence weighed so fresh in his chest. Yet, he knew duty waited for no man. He forced himself into the grand ballroom, where chandeliers glittered and business tycoons shook hands over glasses of wine. Every smile he returned felt like stone, every handshake a test of endurance. In a corner, a waiter placed a glass of wine before him. Smooth, red but tainted, he didn't notice. Each sip pulled him deeper into a haze. At that same time across the city, Amara Nwosu, a 22-year-old law student at the University of Lagos visiting Abuja for a seminar, found herself cornered in the hotel corridor. A man she barely knew pressed her for a drink. When she refused, his grip tightened on her arm. Panic surged. She tore away, running blindly through the endless carpeted hallways until she shoved open a random door. The suite smelled faintly of cologne and liquor. Inside stood Chinedu Okafor, tall, imposing yet stumbling, his movements unsteady, his face shadowed with exhaustion and grief, his sharp eyes flickered with confusion, unfocused under the drug's effect. You shouldn't be here, he mumbled. Amara froze, heart still pounding from her escape. I just needed somewhere safe, she whispered. Chinedu staggered. She rushed to catch his arm before he fell. His skin was hot, his voice weak. I think someone put something in my drink. She helped him to the bed, intending only to let him rest. But between his disorientation and her fear, the room blurred into fragment shadows moving, whispered words, and then silence. Morning light spilled across the suite. Amara woke, head heavy, body strange. The bed beside her was empty. On the pillow lay only one thing, the gold wristwatch gleaming in the sun. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. She didn't know who the man was, only that the heirloom carried a weight she couldn't explain. Clutching it tightly, she left the room, unaware that this single night would change both their lives forever. Back in Lagos, Amara Nwosu tried to push the night at Transcorp Hilton to the back of her mind. She had no name, no certainty, only the lingering memory of strong shoulders, a deep voice, and grief in his eyes. The gold wristwatch lay hidden in her drawer, a heavy reminder she dared not wear, nor discard. Weeks passed, and her life returned to its exhausting rhythm of lectures at the University of Lagos and late-night study sessions. But then came the morning sickness. At first she dismissed it as stress, Law school was never easy, and she had been running herself ragged. Yet when her second period never came, she bought a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines stared back at her. Amara sat frozen in her small Surulere flat, her breath caught, the world spinning. She didn't cry. She simply sat with the weight of it. She didn't even know his name, only broken fragments of that blurred night. Desperate for someone to confide in, she told her stepsister Ngozi, tall, sharp-tongued, and hardened by jealousy. Ngozi was 3 years older and carried herself as though life owed her something. Their parents had died young, leaving the sisters to depend on each other, or at least Amara liked to believe so. When she told Ngozi the truth, her stepsister's lips pursed, eyes narrowing. "You don't even know who the father is?" Amara shook her head, shame burning her cheeks. Ngozi gave a thin smile. "Well, I suppose we only have each other now, but you know Papa always liked you more. Maybe that's why you think you can handle everything alone." Amara frowned at the strange jab, but brushed it off. "We're all we have, Ngozi. I don't want us to fight." Days later, Ngozi returned home looking pale. "It's Kunle," she whispered, wringing her hands. "He's in trouble. He lost everything gambling. He says he'll hurt me if I don't bring him money." Amara froze. "Ngozi, you know Kunle has never been good. He's dangerous." "I know," Ngozi said quickly, eyes pleading. "But this is the last time I leave him after this, I swear." Amara hesitated, then opened her drawer and handed her a small envelope of her savings, barely enough to last the month. That night, while Amara slept, Ngozi quietly opened the drawer again. Her gaze landed on the gold wristwatch Amara had hidden since Abuja. The weight, the shine, it screamed wealth. "This will solve my problems," she whispered. By morning, the heirloom was gone. Months passed. Amara's pregnancy grew harder to hide. She attended classes in oversized clothes until her body could no longer keep the secret. When labor pains came, there was no family waiting in the hospital corridors. Not Ngozi, not Kunle, no one. Alone in the sterile delivery room, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The nurse placed the tiny bundle in her arms. Amara looked down into her daughter's wide, searching eyes and whispered through tears, "Hello, Ezichi. It's just you and me now." She kissed her baby's forehead and vowed quietly, no matter how hard life became, her child would never feel unloved. The months after Ezichi's birth blurred into a cycle of exhaustion. Amara Nwosu worked herself to the bone, waitressing at night, taking clerical jobs during the day, sometimes cleaning houses on weekends, all while nursing her newborn. Her Surulere flat was cramped, the roof often leaking when the rains came, but Amara's determination never wavered. She skipped meals so her baby could have formula, sold off her textbooks just to keep rent paid, yet every night she whispered the same words into Ezichi's tiny ear. "I promise one day it would be better." Ezichi grew, her small face brightening even the darkest days. She had her mother's gentle eyes and something else, a faint, distinct birthmark on her neck. Amara thought little of it, but fate was already marking the child's place in a story larger than either of them could imagine. Meanwhile, Ngozi's life spiraled differently. After pawning the gold wristwatch, she ran straight back to Kunle. Despite his lies and reckless gambling, she convinced herself he was all she had. Their toxic bond clung like chains. When she discovered she was pregnant, Kunle's response was cold. "That's your problem, not mine," he said before, vanishing from her life completely. Ngozi was left with a son she named Obinna. At first she believed she could manage, but as bills piled up and loneliness pressed in, her bitterness festered. Every struggle seemed to fuel her envy of Amara, the sister she had betrayed. While the sisters lived their separate storms, far away in Victoria Island, Chinedu Okafor was consumed by his own search. 6 years had passed since that hazy night at the Transcorp Hilton. 6 years since the mysterious woman vanished with his father's gold watch, the heirloom that symbolized both family legacy and his failure to protect it. The search had long ago moved beyond practicality. It had become personal. The woman's memory haunted him, her soft hands, her calm presence in his haze. It was as though she had been carved into his destiny. One morning, his head of security entered the Okafor Group headquarters. "Sir, we've spotted the watch. It resurfaced in Lagos, sold years ago, but recently bought back from a pawn shop." Chinedu's eyes sharpened. "Find the woman. She saved my life that night. She is part of my future." Word spread quickly across Lagos. The handsome billionaire CEO was searching for a woman tied to a priceless gold heirloom. And when Ngozi overheard the whispers at a cafe, her heart raced. She remembered the watch she had stolen, the one she had once pawned away. She knew exactly where it was. This time, she thought, clutching her son Obinna's hand, my sister won't get the good life while I suffer. In that moment, the road between the two sisters diverged completely, one built on sacrifice, the other on greed. And the watch, gleaming faintly in Ngozi's memory, promised to change everything again. The ballroom of the Echo Hotel Suites glittered with chandeliers as Lagos's elite gathered for a corporate charity gala. Chinedu Okafor, clad in a perfectly tailored black suit, moved through the crowd with his usual commanding presence. He was here for business to strengthen alliances for Okafor Group, but his mind wandered, as it had for 6 years, back to the mystery woman and the stolen heirloom. Every conversation, every handshake felt mechanical. Then, at the far end of the lobby, something caught his eye. A little girl stood by the reception desk, swinging her legs as she waited. Her dress was simple, but neat, her hair tied into a ponytail. Yet it wasn't her clothes that froze Chinedu in his tracks. It was her face, the tilt of her jaw, the spark in her eyes, the boldness in her smile. And then he saw it. A faint, distinct birthmark on her neck. The same mark carried by every firstborn in the Okafor family. The girl beamed at him without hesitation. "You're so handsome," she said cheerfully, her voice bright and confident. "Just like the dad I always imagined." Chinedu's breath caught. "Your dad, you imagine?" he asked gently, his deep voice unsteady. She nodded innocently. "I don't have a dad, so I just imagine one. And you look exactly like him." Before he could speak further, the girl waved toward the entrance. "Mommy," she called. Chinedu turned and the world seemed to tilt. There, walking toward the lobby doors in a simple blouse and skirt, was Amara Nwosu, the same woman who had haunted his thoughts for 6 years, though she looked stronger now, carrying the quiet dignity of sacrifice. Their eyes locked. Chinedu stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Do I know you from somewhere?" he asked, his gaze unrelenting. Amara's hand tightened on the strap of her bag. "I don't think so," she replied quietly. "We've never met." His eyes flickered to the child, then back to her. "And her father?" A shadow crossed Amara's face. She lowered her gaze. "It was a mistake I've lived with," she said softly. The words pierced deeper than he expected. For a long, charged moment, they stood in silence, the noise of the hotel fading around them. Finally, Amara took Ezichi's hand and turned away. Chinedu remained rooted to the spot, his thoughts spinning. The birthmark, the resemblance, the way the girl had looked at him as though she already knew. When he left the hotel that night, her voice still echoed in his memory. "You're so handsome, just like the dad I always imagined." It could not all be coincidence. From the back seat of his car, Chinedu stared out at the Lagos skyline, a gnawing certainty taking hold. If Amara would not tell him the truth, then he would find it himself. In a small cafe on Lagos Island, Ngozi Nwosu leaned forward as gossip hummed across the tables. "They say the CEO of Okafor Group is searching for a woman, the one tied to his father's missing gold watch." Ngozi's pulse quickened. She remembered that watch, the one she had stolen from Amara's drawer years ago, pawned in desperation and recently retrieved. Now she understood its true worth. It was not just gold. It was the key to a life she had always envied. Her lips curled into a determined smile. "This time, Amara won't keep the good life while I suffer," she muttered. That night, she polished the heirloom until it gleamed, rehearsing her story in the mirror. She told herself over and over, "I was the woman from that night. My son is his heir. This is my chance." Her plan was bold, dangerous even. She branded Obinna's neck with a faint scar shaped like the Okafor birthmark, whispering to the crying boy, "This is for your future. One day, you'll thank me." The next morning, dressed carefully in a modest gown to feign humility, Ngozi walked into the marble lobby of Okafor Group headquarters. The security guards blocked her path until she lifted her hand and revealed the gold watch. "Tell Mr. Okafor," she said smoothly, "that I have what he has been searching for." Hours later, Ngozi found herself seated in the opulent Wilson mansion in Banana Island. Chinedu entered the room, tall and unreadable, with Madame Ifeoma, his sharp-eyed mother, observing silently from a velvet armchair. Ngozi placed the heirloom on the table. "This belonged to your father, didn't it? You know what this means." Chinedu's jaw tightened. "I already believe I found my child." Ngozi leaned forward, lowering her voice as though sharing a painful truth. "Then you are mistaken. Whoever you found is not yours. I am the woman from that night 6 years ago. And this," she gestured to the hallway, where little Obinna peeked in nervously, "is your son, the rightful heir to the Okafor legacy." For a moment, silence filled the room. Even Madame Ifeoma looked startled. The watch, the boy, the story, they all lined up too neatly. But Chinedu's eyes stayed cold, guarded. Something inside him whispered that this was not the whole truth. As Ngozi left the mansion, her heart pounded with triumph. She had planted the seed. Now she only needed to water it with lies. Outside the gates, a figure stepped from the shadows, Kene Okafor, Chinedu's ambitious cousin. His smile was thin, his tone calculated. "You might actually be useful to me," he said quietly. "Help me gain influence in the family, and I'll make sure your story is believed." Ngozi hesitated only a moment before nodding. Deal. What she didn't know was that while her schemes were tightening, Chinedu's mind had never been clearer. The little girl at the hotel, Ezichi, had stirred something no watch or word of claim could. And he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how many lies stood in the way. Amara Nwosu stood in her tiny Surulere flat, staring at the diploma on her wall. She had finally graduated from the University of Lagos after years of balancing lectures, motherhood, and part-time jobs. It should have been a triumph proof that she had survived the storms. But the victory was hollow. Weeks passed, and not a single law firm called her back. Her savings had thinned to almost nothing. Rent was 3 months overdue. One evening, her landlord knocked, his voice sharp. "Madam, I've been patient, but you and your daughter must leave by the end of the week." Her heart sank. She had nowhere else to go. That night, she phoned Chioma, her loyal friend from law school. "Chioma, I'm so sorry to ask this," she whispered through tears. "Ezichi and we don't have anywhere to stay." "Pack your things," Chioma replied without hesitation. "You're not sleeping on the streets while I have space." The next day, Amara and Ezichi moved into Chioma's cozy 2-bedroom apartment in Yaba. It was small but warm, and carried the scent of cinnamon from the tea Chioma brewed every morning. For the first time in weeks, Amara felt a small weight lift, but she knew she couldn't stay forever. Desperation pushed her to sell her last valuables, a set of earrings from her late mother, her old textbooks, even clothes she no longer wore. Ezichi noticed the emptying boxes. "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" she asked softly. Amara knelt, brushing her daughter's cheek. "We will be fine, my love. Mommy just has to work harder." One night, while scrolling endlessly through job postings, something caught her eye. Okafor Group, legal assistant position. Her heart skipped. Everyone in Lagos knew Okafor Group was untouchable without connections. Still, with trembling hands, she updated her CV and applied. 2 days later, her phone rang. "This is HR from Okafor Group. We're pleased to offer you the position." Amara nearly dropped the phone. I got the job?" "Yes, ma'am. Report Monday morning." She ran into the sitting room where Chioma was folding laundry. "Chioma, I got the job." Chioma's eyes widened. "Okafor Group. Amara, do you know how impossible that is? Without knowing someone inside, that's a blessing." Amara nodded, her voice breaking. "It's been so long since something good happened. I'm thankful to God." On her first morning at the towering glass headquarters on Victoria Island, Amara wore her best outfit. With no childcare, she had no choice but to bring Ezichi along. Inside the glittering marble lobby, Mr. Adeyemi, the cold office manager, looked her over with disdain. His eyes flicked to Ezichi, then back. "This is not a daycare," he said flatly. Before Amara could respond, he gestured curtly. "Keep her out of the way. Make sure she doesn't touch anything important." Staff whispered and smirked nearby. By mid-morning, Ezichi had been asked to carry tea to desks and pick up scattered files. When one staff member sneered, "Working already, little beggar?" Ezichi stood tall. "My mom is the smartest lawyer I know. You should be nice to her." The office erupted in cruel laughter. "She and her bastard child don't belong here," one woman muttered, loud enough for Amara to hear. Amara clenched her jaw, swallowing the sting of shame. "Come, Ezichi," she said quietly, guiding her daughter away. From his glass office above, Chinedu Okafor stood watching. He said nothing, but his sharp eyes missed nothing. For the first time in 6 years, the woman from his past stood inside his world. And fate had brought her back to him. The Okafor Group office was nearly empty when Amara finished her first week. Most staff had gone home hours earlier, leaving only the faint hum of cleaning machines. She gathered scattered files, grateful for the work, even if it came with humiliation. Ezichi trailed beside her, clutching her backpack, yawning. Turning a corner, Amara collided with someone, her papers scattered across the marble floor. "I'm so sorry," she began, kneeling to gather them. She looked up and her breath caught. Chinedu Okafor stood before her, sharp in a dark suit, his tall frame drawing the air out of the room. His assistant, John, moved to scold her, but Chinedu raised a hand. "It's fine, John." Ezichi's eyes lit up. "A handsome uncle," she blurted, smiling. Chinedu crouched slightly, amused. "We meet again," he said softly. Amara froze, heart pounding. So this was the man from the hotel lobby, the one she had tried so hard to forget. He extended his hand politely. "Chinedu Okafor, CEO of Okafor Group." Her lips trembled as she shook his hand. Amara Nwosu." In the weeks that followed, their paths crossed often, brief encounters in the elevator, greetings in the hall. Then one afternoon, he summoned her to his office. "I had my team look into something," he said, his voice calm but intent. "You've been struggling with your daughter's school fees." Amara stiffened. "I didn't come here for charity, Mr. Okafor." "This isn't charity," he replied, glancing toward Ezichi, who was humming quietly by the window. "It's because of her. She's bright, confident, and she deserves more than what the system is giving her. She should already be in school." Amara hesitated, then nodded. "If it's truly for her, I'll accept." Within a week, Ezichi was enrolled at Queensbridge Academy in Lekki, one of Lagos's most prestigious schools. At first, Ezichi was thrilled, proudly carrying her new backpack. But soon the whispers began. Wealthy children mocked her modest clothes. One afternoon, a boy from a prominent family slipped a small bottle into her school bag. When the principal found it, his face hardened. "This is unacceptable. She must be expelled immediately." Amara arrived within the hour, fire in her eyes. "You have no proof she put that in her bag. This is slander." The principal sneered. "This is a school for the children of the rich. You're just a poor single mother. Know your place." The door opened, and Chinedu entered, his voice cutting like steel. Interesting choice of words. "Mr. Okafor," the principal stammered. "This school belongs to Okafor Group," Chinedu said coldly. He placed a tablet on the desk, playing CCTV footage of the wealthy boy slipping the bottle into Ezichi's bag. The principal turned pale. "The bully is expelled," Chinedu declared flatly. His gaze sharpened. "And you are fired. I will not tolerate adults targeting children because they don't fit your idea of wealth." As they left the office, Ezichi looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Thank you, handsome uncle." He smiled faintly. "Don't thank me. Just keep being yourself." Beside them, Amara's hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from the shock of someone standing up for them without asking for anything in return. She glanced at Chinedu. "I don't know how to thank you. You didn't have to do that." His eyes met hers, steady and warm. "I wanted to. No child deserves to be treated that way." Something in his voice softened her walls, even if she fought to keep them standing. For the first time, Amara wondered if the man who had once been a blurred shadow in her past was becoming something more, not just to Ezichi, but to her as well. While Amara slowly built a fragile sense of stability inside Okafor Group, another storm brewed across Lagos. Ngozi Nwosu, dressed in her finest borrowed lace, sat in a private dining room in Ikoyi, across from Kene Okafor, Chinedu's ambitious cousin. His smooth smile didn't reach his eyes. You want wealth? I want power. Together we can make Daniel. He caught himself correcting. Chinedu, believe your story. If he accepts your son, Obinna, as his heir, half the company is already in my hands. Ngozi's fingers tightened on her wineglass. She thought of Amara's child. Ezichi, the girl she had seen only once in passing, bright-eyed and loved despite poverty. Bitterness burned her throat. This time it will be me, she whispered. Not Amara. Kene leaned forward. Then play your role well. Convince Chinedu you are the woman from that night. Make him doubt the other one. The gold watch is your weapon. Use it. Meanwhile, in Banana Island, Chinedu sat alone in his father's study, the heirloom watch lying heavy in his palm. It was beautiful, yes, but it had become a curse. 2 women, 2 children, one truth buried beneath lies. His mind kept returning to Ezichi, the way she tilted her head when she spoke, the faint mark on her neck, the same his grandfather once traced with pride, and her boldness declaring him the father she always imagined. No forged story could compete with that. But Ngozi was relentless. She arrived at the mansion unannounced. Obinna by her side rehearsed sorrow in her eyes. Chinedu, she began softly, I know you doubt me, but I kept quiet all these years because I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid you would reject our son. Obinna peeked shyly from behind her gown. The scar on his neck, shaped like the family birthmark, glowed faintly in the light. To an untrained eye, it was convincing. Madame Ifeoma studied the boy, her sharp eyes narrowing. She had lived too long to be easily fooled, yet even she couldn't deny the resemblance Ngozi had crafted. Chinedu, you must be certain, she warned. Legacy is not a game. Chinedu's jaw clenched. He remained silent, his heart tugging in 2 directions, one toward the smooth lies before him, the other toward the quiet truth he sensed in Amara and Ezichi. That evening he sat in his office staring at Lagos's skyline. His assistant John entered quietly. Sir, what should we do about Madame Ngozi and her boy? Chinedu's voice was low but firm. Keep them close. If there's truth, it will show. If it's a lie, it will unravel. Either way, I will know. Far away, in Chioma's modest apartment, Amara tucked Ezichi into bed after another long day. Her daughter smiled sleepily. Mommy, when handsome uncle smiles at me, it feels like I already belong to him. Amara's chest tightened. She brushed her daughter's cheek and whispered, Sleep, my love. But in her heart, fear grew. She had built walls around her secret for 6 years. Now those walls were cracking, and she knew that when the truth broke free, it would either save them or destroy everything. Chinedu, Okafor could no longer ignore the questions gnawing at him. 2 women, 2 children, 1 heirloom watch binding them all. The shadows of that night at Transcorp Hilton had haunted him for 6 years, and he knew the truth could no longer remain buried. He began quietly observing Amara. From his corner office, he saw her arrive early, stay late, working tirelessly, despite the whispers from colleagues. He watched how she shielded Ezichi from cruelty, how the little girl's laughter could brighten even the coldest halls of Okafor Group. The more he saw, the more certain he became. Blood recognized blood. But Ngozi was tightening her grip. She returned to Banana Island with Obinna, weaving her lies with polished tears. Chinedu, please, she pleaded, holding out the gold watch like an offering. I've carried this burden alone for too long. Obinna deserves to know his father. Don't let another woman deceive you. Her words dripped like poison, and for a moment even Madame Ifeoma wavered. The watch, the scar, The rehearsed sorrow, it all seemed too precise. That night, Chinedu summoned his cousin Kene for counsel. But Kene's smile was thin, his advice pointed. Family must protect family, he said smoothly. If Ngozi says the boy is yours, accept it. Better to embrace certainty than risk scandal. Something in Kene's tone unsettled Chinedu. He remembered his father's words as he handed over the heirloom in Act 1. Protect our name. Protect the company. Protect our legacy. And he realized legacy was not just a watch or a surname. It was truth. Determined, he instructed his assistant John discreetly. Find out everything about Ngozi and everything about Amara. No more shadows. I need proof. Meanwhile, Amara faced storms of her own. At Queensbridge Academy, Ezichi came home in tears one afternoon. Mommy, they said I don't belong there. They said I'm not rich enough to sit with them. Amara held her close. Don't ever forget, my daughter. Worth isn't measured by wealth. It's measured by the love you carry, by the truth you stand on. Her words steadied Ezichi, but inside Amara trembled. She feared what would happen if the truth of Ezichi's birth reached Chinedu. Would he accept them or reject them as an inconvenient mistake? That evening, as Amara walked through the Okafor group lobby with Ezichi, she turned a corner and came face to face with Ngozi. The stepsisters froze. For a moment, neither spoke. Ngozi's gaze swept over Ezichi, her lips curling into a cold smile. So, this is her, the child you've been hiding all these years. Amara's pulse raced. Stay away from us, Ngozi. But Ngozi only leaned closer, her whisper sharp as glass. You think you can win? You think he'll choose you? Watch me, Amara. I'll take everything the man, the name, the legacy, and you'll be left with nothing. Amara's hands trembled as she pulled Ezichi close. For the first time in years, she felt the storm of betrayal rising again. And she knew. The breaking point had come. The past was no longer a shadow. It was here, standing in front of her, threatening to shatter everything she had fought to protect. The city skyline glittered outside Chinedu Okafor's office window, but his mind was far from its beauty. The heirloom watch sat on his desk, its golden face gleaming under the light. To anyone else, it was jewelry. To him, it was a promise from his dying father. Protect our legacy. Now, that legacy stood on a knife's edge. John, his trusted assistant, entered with a folder. Sir, we followed your instructions. We investigated Madame Ngozi and Miss Amara. Chinedu's eyes sharpened. Tell me. John laid out the evidence. Ngozi had pawned the watch years earlier, retrieved it only recently. Her claim of being at the Transcorp Hilton that night was riddled with holes hotel records showed no such name. And the scar on Obina's neck? Medical reports revealed it was man-made, not natural. Chinedu's chest tightened. Lies, manipulation, betrayal? And Amara? He asked quietly. John's tone softened. Miss Amara raised her daughter alone in Surulere. She never married. Neighbors spoke of her sacrifice working multiple jobs, skipping meals so the child could eat. They say the little girl carries a mark, the same as your family's. Chinedu closed the folder slowly. His heart pounded with a clarity he could no longer ignore. Ezichi was his blood, his daughter. But proof on paper wasn't enough. He needed the truth to stand before his eyes. The same week, the Okafor mansion prepared for a family dinner. Madame Ifeoma insisted on it. Both Ngozi and Amara were invited, though Amara came reluctantly, urged by Kioma. The dining hall glowed with chandeliers, but beneath the sparkle, Tension hung heavy. Ngozi sat proudly with Obinna at her side, the gold watch gleaming on her wrist as though it belonged there. Across the table, Amara kept her eyes low, Ezichi holding her hand tightly. Kene raised a glass, smirking. To family and legacy? Chinedu's voice cut through, calm but commanding. Legacy without truth is a house built on sand. The room fell silent. He turned to Ngozi. You claim to be the woman from that night, that Obinna is my heir, yet everything about your story falls apart under scrutiny. Lies can glitter, Ngozi, but they cannot last. Ngozi's face paled, but she forced a smile. You would take the word of her, a poor girl with nothing to her name? Before Chinedu could answer, Ezichi stood, her small voice trembling but clear. My mommy may not have riches, but she tells me the truth. Ways. She lifted her chin, the faint family birthmark on her neck catching the light. Gasps echoed around the table. Madame Ifeoma leaned forward, her sharp eyes softening. The mark, she whispered, just like your father, just like yours, Chinedu. Ngozi shot up from her chair. This proves nothing, she cried, her voice desperate. She's tricking you. I am the one. But Chinedu raised a hand, his voice like steel. Enough. The time for lies is over. Tonight we let the truth decide. The room stilled, the weight of his words pressing down on every soul present. For Amara, her heart hammered in her chest. For Ngozi, her carefully built scheme teetered on collapse. And for Chinedu, the son who had once promised his dying father to protect their legacy, the moment had come to face what kind of man he truly was. The dining hall of the Okafor mansion was still heavy with tension. The gold heirloom rested on the polished table, gleaming like a witness to every lie spoken under its shadow. Ngozi sat rigid, her fingers tight on Obinna's shoulder, eyes darting nervously. Amara, though quiet, held Ezichi's hand with steady resolve. The child's innocent gaze and the faint family birthmark on her neck had already shaken the room. Chinedu rose to his feet, his tall frame commanding silence. Tonight, we end this. Truth will not hide in shadows any longer. He signaled, and John entered with documents. These are the investigations. Hotel records prove Ngozi was never at Transcorp Hilton that night. Medical files confirm Obinna's scar was branded, not born. And pawn records show she sold this watch years ago before retrieving it. Gasps spread across the table. Madame Ifeoma leaned back, her sharp eyes never leaving Ngozi. So it was greed, not truth, that brought you here. Ngozi's mask cracked. Lies! She shouted, her voice shrill. He is your heir, Chinedu. Can't you see? She jabbed a trembling finger at Amara. She is nothing but a poor girl clinging to a fantasy. Chinedu's voice cut like steel. Legacy is not built on lies, Ngozi. My father's watch was meant to preserve truth, not crown impostors. He turned, his gaze softening as it fell on Ezichi. The mark she carries, the strength in her eyes, those cannot be forged. Ezichi tilted her head, her small voice breaking the silence. Mommy says truth always wins, even if it comes late. The words pierced deeper than any evidence. Chinedu's chest tightened. He looked at Amara, her weary eyes filled with both fear and quiet dignity. You carried this alone for 6 years, he said gently, but you no longer have to. Madame Ifeoma stood slowly, her regal presence unshaken. She placed a hand on Ezichi's shoulder, her voice firm but warm. This child is family. She carries our blood, our legacy, our future, and you, Amara, have shown more courage and honesty than many who bear our name. Ngozi's face crumbled, as the weight of her schemes collapsed. Kene, sensing the tide had turned, slipped quietly from the room, leaving her to her shame. Guards escorted Ngozi and Obinna out, her protests echoing into the night. For the first time in years, Amara felt her heart release the burden of fear. Chinedu stepped closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. I promised my father I would protect our legacy. I see now you and Ezichi are that legacy. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. She squeezed Ezichi's hand, realizing the storm that had haunted her since that night in Act 1 was finally breaking. The heirloom watch lay on the table, no longer a symbol of pain, but of redemption. And for the first time, it seemed to gleam with hope. The echoes of confrontation lingered in the Okafor mansion long after Ngozi was removed. The lies had been exposed, the scars revealed, and the truth finally stood clear. Ezichi was Chinedu Okafor's daughter. For the first time in years, Amara Nwosu felt the crushing weight of fear lift from her shoulders. She had carried the burden of secrecy alone since that blurred night at the Transcorp Hilton. Now, standing in the mansion's grand hall with her daughter at her side, she realized she no longer needed to hide. Chinedu stepped forward, the gold heirloom in his hand. His deep voice was steady, but his eyes glistened with rare emotion. This watch was given to me as a promise to protect my family, my name, my legacy. For years I thought I had failed that promise, but today I see the truth. He turned to Ezichi, kneeling so his eyes met hers. You are my legacy, not because of this watch, not because of my name, but because you carry a strength and honesty that no one can take away. Ezichi's small arms wrapped tightly around his neck, her innocent voice muffled against his suit. Does that mean I have a daddy now? Chinedu's chest tightened. Yes, my princess, you always did. Amara stood still, tears brimming. She had braced herself for rejection, but instead she saw acceptance not just for Ezichi, but for herself. Chinedu looked at her, his gaze both firm and gentle. You raised her with courage when I wasn't there. You gave her love when I gave you nothing. For that, I owe you more than words can repay. Madame Ifeoma stepped forward, her regal presence softening as she placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. You are welcome here, Amara, both of you. Our family is stronger with truth and weaker without it. The heirloom watch gleamed in Chinedu's palm. He set it on the table, no longer a burden of shame, but a symbol of redemption. This watch will not just be a reminder of the past, it will be a promise for the future, a future built on truth. Outside, Lagos glittered under the night sky, the city alive with noise and light. But inside the mansion there was peace, a peace born not from wealth, but from honesty, forgiveness, and love. Amara exhaled deeply, finally allowing herself to believe in a future where she and her daughter no longer had to fight alone. For Chinedu, the son who once stood by his dying father's bedside with a promise, the circle was complete. He had not failed. He had protected the legacy by choosing truth over lies, compassion over greed, and family over power. And so began a new chapter, not just for Amara, not just for Ezichi, but for all of them, bound not by an heirloom of gold, but by a legacy of love.